Greetings, YouTubers of the world. I am Arcanum Fantasy, and today we are going to go over one of a very small minority of fanfics called The Best Night Ever, which in all accounts is simply a crossover concept story between, well, The Best Night Ever from Season 1 of My Little Pony and Groundhog Day from Prince Blueblood's perspective. Yeah, a rather novel concept, I'm sure, considering the fact this is a character that people have either made into a very well put together diplomat, an extremely egotistical playboy, to a straight out ninny pants idiot, or just some pony you want to rip to shreds. All because of one goddamn scene in one goddamn episode. People, I think we can move on. Anyway, much like in the movie Groundhog Day, the story pretty much has Blueblood reliving the same night of the gala every single day, countless numbers of times. And each time goes initially from irritation to complete insanity to depression to heartbreak in the end. Probably what I consider to be the most hilarious scene ever is when he actually asks the elements of harmony to blast him with rainbows. I don't think I don't know how the writer could have written that with a straight face. I honestly feel bad for anyone who has to do readings on these on their channels, because that line alone. Oh, God. Oh, man. And there's also this one scene where he pretty much just goes completely nuts and has Sapphire Shore and her entire entourage decked out in gold, with himself dressed as like some sort of weird cross between Michael Jackson and Johnny Cash. Oh my god! And then proposed to Sapphire right then and there, making her the Princess of Pop. He did all this knowing for a fact that the next day it was just going to get erased anyway, so what the hell. Then, of course, there was the scene where he ended up pretty much causing the entire castle to burst into complete flames. That was one of those scenes I mentioned where he goes completely insane. Then there were plenty of parts where he basically kills himself. Even one part where he mentions how creative he had gotten in some of them. But probably one of the best scenes was when he was trying to make the best night ever the best night ever for each of the main six. See, he initially thought that the reason why the day keeps repeating is because the gala itself was a huge disappointment for the main six. So he tries to come up with ways for each of them to integrate into the gala and have fun at the same time. Well, it works, but a little too well. You have to read these couple chapters to really get it. Believe me, it works, but it doesn't work at the same time. Let's just say Chara facing off against Sans would have a little more surprises to it than these scenes would to Blueblood. He also manages to afterwards, well, mature. See, he kind of starts off as a selfish brat at the beginning of the whole thing, and then eventually becomes, well, a decent guy. Even developing very real and very strong feelings for Rarity. Up to the point where we get to one of probably the most funny yet also beautiful climaxes in fanfiction history, which I will not be spoiling. If you want to know how this thing fully ends, read the fic. Now let's see, issues I have. Pacing? Well, there isn't technically any pacing issues since the story almost literally goes on loop, but in each loop there's a completely different attribute being added and subtracted and then added again in a different way. Let's just say this fanfic should definitely not be a math problem. Anyway, the pacing is, I guess, technically perfect, so a solid 10. Spelling and grammar are both pretty well done. There are obviously a few spelling errors, but these are more or less misspelled uses of the words like to and the. As far as grammar, it's done well. Putting both at 8s. Tensing error, non-existent. This fanfic actually keeps the right kind of tensing consistent, so I have to give it a solid 10. And there doesn't appear to be any name overload, seeing as this is pretty much written entirely from Blue Blood's perspective, within his own mind and no external narrative. So, yeah, it's perfect in that regard too, a solid 10. So overall, this fanfiction gets a solid 10 in my book. An incredibly beautiful, yet also extremely hilarious fanfic that mixes both drama, sadness, comedy, just about everything in between all together into one really well put together milkshake, so to speak. So, yeah, this whole fic gets a solid 10. Not quite good enough to reach my requirements for a Platinum 11, but still pretty good. So, with all that said, you all know what you gotta do. Like, comment, subscribe, and if you're feeling particularly generous, stop by my Patreon account and leave a small donation. After all, every little bit helps. Also, don't be afraid to stop by my own fanfiction account and see some of my own written work and critique that for me. Any kind of feedback I can get from you guys would be perfect, as even though I do reviews on these sort of things, I don't consider myself perfect in that regard. And I'm always looking forward to finding ways to improve my own skills as a writer. So, with all that said, see y'all later. Bye.